Boss step in and deal with the tourists himself. The place was known for its peaceful environment, friendly staff, and smooth service. Locals worked hard to keep everything clean and welcoming. For many workers, this job was not just work, it was their pride. By late morning, the place became crowded. Buses stopped near the entrance, dropping off tourists from different cities and countries. Laughter, chatter, and excitement filled the air. Staff members stood at their assigned spots, greeting visitors, checking tickets, and guiding people with polite smiles. Everything seemed normal, but small signs of trouble slowly began to appear. One group of tourists stood out from the rest. They were louder than others and ignored basic instructions. When asked to stand in line, they complained. When told about waiting time, they argued. At first, staff members believed it was just excitement or tiredness from travel. They responded calmly, using kind words and patient tones. They were trained to stay respectful, no matter how difficult the situation became. As time passed, the group's behavior became worse. They spoke loudly among themselves, pointing fingers and shaking their heads. One tourist demanded faster service, even though others had been waiting longer. Another ignored signs and tried to enter restricted areas. Nearby visitors started noticing the tension. Some looked uncomfortable, while others quietly stepped away, not wanting to be part of any trouble. A young staff member approached the group again, trying to explain the rules clearly. He spoke slowly, choosing simple words, hoping to avoid misunderstanding. Instead of listening, one tourist interrupted him and waved a hand dismissively. The staff member took a step back, feeling embarrassed but still calm. He had faced difficult people before, but something about this situation felt heavier. Around them, the environment began to change. The cheerful mood slowly faded, replaced by nervous glances and whispers. Other staff members noticed what was happening and exchanged worried looks. They wanted to help, but they were also handling their own duties. The place was too busy to leave unattended. The tourists continued complaining, now about small things that usually did not matter. They questioned prices, rules, and even the behavior of the staff. Each complaint was louder than the last. The workers tried to explain, but every explanation was met with more frustration. It was as if the tourists were not looking for solutions, only reasons to argue. Some visitors nearby started recording videos on their phones. This made the staff even more nervous. They knew how quickly misunderstandings could spread online. A small issue could become a big problem if shown without context. The workers felt pressure building inside them, but they continued doing their best. The manager on duty noticed the growing tension and walked toward the group. He had years of experience and believed he could calm the situation. With a polite smile, he greeted the tourists and asked what the problem was. For a moment, it seemed like things might improve. The tourists explained their complaints, speaking over each other. The manager listened carefully, nodding and showing understanding. He tried to offer solutions, but none seemed good enough. Each suggestion was rejected. The tourists demanded things that were not possible or fair to other visitors. The manager stayed calm, but inside he felt the weight of responsibility. He had to protect both the visitors' experience and his staff's dignity. Minutes passed, and the situation did not improve. Instead, voices grew louder. The tourists began attracting more attention. People stopped walking and started watching. The peaceful tourist place now felt tense and uncomfortable. Staff members nearby felt helpless. They wanted to support their manager, but there was little they could do. One worker quietly stepped aside and made a call. He explained briefly that the situation was getting out of control. His voice was calm, but his words carried urgency. After ending the call, he returned to his position, hoping help would arrive soon. Meanwhile, the tourists continued pushing their demands. They spoke as if they were the only ones who mattered. They ignored the fact that others were waiting patiently. The manager tried one last time to reason with them. He explained the rules again, emphasizing fairness and safety. His voice remained respectful but firm. Still, the tourists were not satisfied. One of them laughed sarcastically, making the manager pause. That moment changed everything. The laughter was not loud, but it carried disrespect. Staff members felt it deeply. They had worked long hours, treated visitors kindly, and followed rules strictly. Seeing their efforts dismissed hurt more than any complaint. The crowd around them grew larger. Some visitors shook their heads in disapproval of the tourists' behavior. Others looked uncomfortable, unsure of what might happen next. The air felt heavy, as if everyone was holding their breath. Behind the scenes, word spread quickly among the staff. Everyone knew that if the situation continued, it could damage the reputation of the place. This location depended on good reviews and positive experiences. One bad incident could affect many families who relied on this work. The manager finally stepped back slightly. He realized this situation needed more than polite explanations. It needed authority, calm strength, and experience. He knew exactly who could handle this. As the tourists continued speaking loudly, none of them noticed a man walking toward the area from the far end of the place. He was dressed simply, blending in with the environment. His face was calm, his steps steady. Staff members who recognized him felt a quiet sense of relief. The man stopped at a short distance and observed everything. He did not interrupt. He watched how the tourists spoke, how the manager tried to handle the situation, and how the staff stood silently, waiting. His eyes noticed every detail, from the expressions on people's faces to the way the crowd reacted. The tourists were still unaware of who he was. To them, he looked like just another visitor. But among the staff, a silent message passed from one person to another. The boss had arrived. The tension remained high, but something had shifted. Even before he spoke a single word, his presence seemed to steady the atmosphere. Staff members straightened their posture. The manager felt supported without needing to turn around. The tourists kept talking, unaware that the person who had the final say was now standing close by, listening carefully. The boss waited patiently, allowing the situation to show its true nature. He believed in understanding before action. As the sun shone overhead and the crowd stood watching, the moment felt important. This was no longer just about complaints or rules. It was about respect, leadership, and responsibility. And soon the boss would step forward and change everything. The situation did not calm down after the boss arrived quietly. Instead, the pressure on the staff continued to grow. The tourists were still speaking loudly, repeating the same complaints again and again. They seemed more interested in proving a point than finding a solution. Other visitors stood nearby, watching closely, unsure whether to stay or walk away. The manager tried once more to handle things on his own. He kept his voice polite and steady, even though his patience was being tested. He explained that the rules were the same for everyone and were meant to keep the place safe and organized. Some tourists listened for a moment, but soon they began interrupting again. Their voices overlapped, creating noise and confusion. Staff members around the area felt nervous. Some of them were young and new to the job. This was their first time seeing such behavior from visitors. They whispered to each other, wondering what might happen next. They worried about saying the wrong thing or making the situation worse. Even experienced workers felt uncomfortable. They had dealt with complaints before, but this felt different. One staff member noticed that other tourists were starting to look annoyed. Families with children wanted to enjoy their visit in peace. Elderly visitors sat on benches, clearly tired of the noise. A calm place meant for relaxation now felt stressful. The staff felt responsible for this change in atmosphere, even though they had done nothing wrong. The manager stepped aside for a brief moment and spoke quietly with two senior workers. They discussed possible ways to reduce the tension. Should they offer a small compromise? Should they ask the group to move to a quieter area? Each option seemed risky. Anything they did could be misunderstood or make the tourists more upset. Meanwhile, the tourists continued to express their dissatisfaction. One of them pointed toward the entrance, claiming that they had waited too long. Another said they deserved special attention because they had traveled far. Their words carried frustration, but also a sense of unfair expectation. They did not consider the dozens of other people waiting patiently. The staff tried to continue their duties, but it was difficult to focus. Simple tasks now felt heavy. Every glance from a tourist felt like judgment. The workers felt their confidence slipping. They questioned themselves even though they had followed the rules correctly. Behind the scenes, the office phone rang more than once. Supervisors received updates about the situation. Everyone understood that this incident could affect the reputation of the place. In today's world, one moment could be recorded and shared widely. The thought worried the staff deeply. The manager returned to the group, hoping to end the discussion peacefully. He apologized for the inconvenience, even though the issue was not his fault. He offered clear explanations again, speaking slowly and carefully. For a short time, the tourists grew quieter. It seemed like progress. But then one tourist shook his head and spoke loudly again. He questioned the manager's authority and demanded immediate action. His tone caused nearby visitors to frown. The manager felt his face warm slightly, but he controlled his reaction. He reminded himself that staying calm was part of his role. The staff noticed the boss standing a short distance away. He was still silent, still observing. Some workers wondered why he had not stepped in yet. Others understood that he was watching to fully understand the situation. His calm presence gave them some comfort, even if he had not spoken. The pressure on the team continued to rise. A young worker accidentally dropped a stack of papers while trying to help another visitor. The sound drew attention, making her feel embarrassed. She picked them up quickly, her hands shaking slightly. Small moments like this showed how stressed everyone had become. A senior staff member gently guided other visitors away from the area, hoping to reduce the crowd. He smiled politely and suggested alternative spots to visit. Most people understood and followed his advice. This helped a little, but the main problem remained. The tourists now seemed frustrated that they were not getting the reaction they expected. Their voices became sharper. They questioned rules again and again, even after receiving answers. It felt like a test of patience for everyone involved. The manager finally realized that his efforts were no longer enough. He had done everything by the book. Continuing like this would only exhaust the staff further. He took a deep breath and stepped slightly back, giving space. At that moment, the boss moved closer. Still calm, he stood beside the manager, not in front of him. This small gesture meant a lot to the staff. It showed unity and support. The boss did not raise his voice or show anger. He simply listened. The tourists noticed him now. They paused for a second, unsure if he was another staff member or something more. His confident posture and calm expression made them hesitate. The noise around them lowered slightly. The boss allowed the manager to finish his explanation. Then he asked a simple question, directed at the tourists, asking them to explain their main concern one at a time. His voice was calm but carried authority. It was not loud, but it was clear. This small change in approach affected the situation. The tourists began speaking one by one instead of all at once. The tone shifted slightly. They still complained, but they were less aggressive. Other visitors noticed the change and felt hopeful. Staff members watched closely, feeling a mix of relief and curiosity. They trusted the boss. They had seen him handle difficult situations before, always with fairness and respect. His presence reminded them why they respected him. The pressure in the air slowly began to ease, though the problem was not solved yet. Everyone could feel that the situation was reaching a turning point. The boss had not yet given any decision, but he was preparing to take control fully. As the sun moved higher in the sky and shadows shifted on the ground, the moment felt important. This was no longer just about one group of tourists. It was about how leadership shows itself during difficult times. The staff stood quietly, ready to support whatever decision would come next. The tourists waited, unsure of what to expect. The boss remained calm, listening carefully, knowing that his next words would decide how everything moved forward. The boss stood quietly for a few seconds after hearing the tourists explain their complaints one by one. He did not rush to respond. He looked at each person carefully, listening not only to their words, but also to their tone and body language. His calm nature made people pause. The noise that had filled the area earlier was now replaced by an uneasy silence. He nodded slowly, showing that he understood what they were saying. Then he turned his head slightly and glanced at the manager and the staff members standing nearby. He saw tired faces, tense shoulders, and worried eyes. These were people who had worked hard since early morning, doing their best to welcome everyone. The boss understood their effort without needing any explanation. He stepped forward just a little, enough for everyone to see and hear him clearly. His voice was steady and respectful. He thanked the tourists for sharing their concerns and said he appreciated their patience. His words were simple, but they carried weight. The tourists listened closely now, something they had not done earlier. He explained the rules of the place again, but this time in a different way. He did not sound like he was reading from a guidebook. Instead, he spoke like someone explaining things to a friend. He talked about safety, fairness, and how the place worked during busy hours. He made it clear that the rules were not meant to cause trouble, but to ensure everyone had a good experience. As he spoke, the tourists' expressions slowly changed. Some looked thoughtful. Others avoided eye contact, realizing they might have reacted too strongly. The boss did not accuse anyone. He simply stated facts and expectations in a calm manner. Then he did something unexpected. He acknowledged that waiting could be frustrating, especially after long travel. He said it was normal to feel tired and impatient sometimes. This small show of understanding softened the mood further. The tourist seemed less defensive now. After that, his tone became slightly firmer, though still polite. He explained that disrespectful behavior toward staff would not be accepted. He said his team was trained to help, but they also deserved respect. He did not raise his voice, yet his message was clear. The staff felt a wave of relief hearing these words. Nearby visitors nodded quietly in agreement. Some even smiled, feeling that someone had finally taken control in the right way. The environment began to feel lighter, as if a heavy cloud was slowly lifting. One of the tourists spoke again, but this time more calmly. He admitted that things may have gone too far. Another tourist followed, saying they did not mean to cause trouble. These words were not loud apologies, but they were enough to change the direction of the moment. The boss thanked them for understanding. He then offered a fair solution that followed the rules and did not affect other visitors. He explained clearly what could be done and what could not. His honesty built trust. Even though the solution was not exactly what the tourists wanted at first, they accepted it. The manager standing beside him felt a sense of relief he had not felt all day. The staff members straightened their posture, feeling supported and valued. They were no longer alone in handling the pressure. The boss then turned to the staff and thanked them openly for their patience and professionalism. This small act meant a lot. It showed everyone watching that the team mattered. The staff felt their confidence return. The tourists slowly stepped back, making space for others. The crowd that had gathered began to thin. People resumed their activities, talking quietly among themselves. Children laughed again, and families moved forward without fear or tension. The boss stayed for a few more minutes, making sure everything was under control. He answered a few simple questions from other visitors and guided the manager on how to continue smoothly. His presence alone kept things calm. As he prepared to step away, some staff members exchanged relieved smiles. The young worker who had dropped the papers earlier now stood more confidently, watching the area with focus instead of fear. The stress that had filled the air earlier was almost gone. The tourists moved on with their visit, quieter and more respectful than before. They followed instructions without complaint. The change was clear to everyone. The boss walked away slowly, blending back into the normal flow of the place. He did not seek attention or praise. For him, this was just part of his responsibility. Behind him, the tourist place returned to its peaceful rhythm. The crisis had passed, not through anger or force, but through calm leadership and clear communication. Everyone involved learned something from the moment, even if they did not say it out loud. And though the day was not over yet, one thing was certain. The turning point had arrived, and things would never feel the same again for the staff who witnessed what true leadership looked like. After the boss stepped away, the place slowly returned to its normal rhythm. The sound of calm conversations replaced the earlier noise. Staff members returned to their duties with renewed energy. Their movements were more confident now, and their faces looked lighter. The tension that had been building for hours finally began to fade. The manager took a deep breath and thanked the staff quietly. He could see the change in their expressions. The fear and confusion were gone, replaced by relief and pride. He reminded them to continue their work as usual and to treat every visitor with the same respect they always showed. His voice was calm, but there was a new strength in it. Visitors who had witnessed the situation earlier began sharing their thoughts among themselves. Many appreciated how the problem was handled. Some nodded in approval, while others smiled at the staff as they passed by. These small gestures meant a lot. They helped heal the stress that had been building throughout the day. The tourists who caused the trouble earlier moved through the place quietly now. They followed instructions without complaint and avoided drawing attention to themselves. A few of them even thanked staff members when helped. The change was noticeable. It showed that calm guidance had a stronger effect than arguments ever could. As time passed, the staff became more relaxed. They focused on their work instead of worrying about what might happen next. The young workers learned by watching. They saw how leadership and teamwork could turn a difficult moment into a positive lesson. It was something no training manual could teach them. The manager checked different areas to make sure everything was running smoothly. Each section was calm and organized. Lines moved steadily, visitors followed rules, and staff communicated well with each other. It felt like the place had found its balance again. Behind the scenes, staff members quietly discussed what had happened. They spoke with respect and appreciation for the boss. They admired how he handled the situation without raising his voice or embarrassing anyone. To them, it was a reminder that real strength often comes with patience and understanding. One staff member shared how nervous she had felt earlier and how relieved she was now. Another said he felt proud to work under such leadership. These conversations brought the team closer. They felt united by the experience. The rest of the day passed smoothly. New visitors arrived, unaware of the earlier tension. They were greeted with smiles and helpful guidance. The staff treated them with the same warmth as always, now with even more confidence. As the sun began to lower, casting soft light across the area, the atmosphere felt peaceful again. Birds could be heard nearby, and the gentle sound of movement filled the space. It was hard to believe that earlier the same place had been filled with stress. The manager later found a quiet moment to speak with the boss. He thanked him sincerely for stepping in and supporting the team. The boss listened quietly and reminded him that leadership meant standing with people when they needed it most. His words were simple but meaningful. Before leaving, the boss took a short walk around the place. He observed staff members working together smoothly. He saw visitors enjoying their time without trouble. This gave him satisfaction, not pride, but calm assurance that things were in good hands. The staff noticed him passing by and greeted him respectfully. Some smiled, others nodded. There was a sense of mutual respect between them. They did not see him as someone distant or unapproachable. They saw him as someone who cared. As evening approached, the crowd began to thin. Families gathered their belongings, and visitors slowly made their way toward the exit. Staff members helped with directions and final questions. The day was coming to an end. The manager gathered the team briefly before closing. He thanked everyone for staying calm and professional during a challenging situation. He reminded them that difficult moments can happen at any time, but how they respond makes all the difference. His words were encouraging and honest. The team listened carefully. They felt stronger together. The experience had taught them something valuable about patience, respect, and trust in leadership. As the last visitors left and the gates were secured, the staff began cleaning and preparing for the next day. The place grew quiet. The lights softened and the air felt peaceful. Each staff member carried the memory of the day with them. It was not just a story of conflict, but a lesson in calm leadership and teamwork. They knew that if another difficult moment came, they would be better prepared. The day ended not with exhaustion, but with quiet pride. Everyone left knowing they had learned something important. And though no one said it out loud, they all felt grateful to be part of a team where respect and calm guidance truly mattered. The next morning began quietly, as if the place itself remembered what had happened the day before and wanted a fresh start. The air felt cooler, and the early sunlight spread softly across the entrance. Staff members arrived one by one, greeting each other with warm smiles. There was a different feeling among them now, something steady and confident that had not been there before. They prepared the area as usual, cleaning paths, arranging signs, and checking schedules. But their movements were calmer. They spoke with ease, sharing small jokes and light conversations. The stress from the previous day had not followed them into the morning. Instead, it had turned into a shared memory, something that quietly strengthened their bond. As visitors began to arrive, the staff welcomed them with genuine warmth. Their smiles were not forced. They felt proud of how they had handled a difficult situation and proud of being part of a team that supported one another. Even the youngest workers seemed more confident, standing straighter and speaking more clearly. The manager noticed the change immediately. He watched how smoothly things were running and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He did not need to give many instructions. Everyone knew their role and carried it out with care. The team had grown not just in skill but in trust. Visitors moved through the place peacefully. Lines stayed organized, rules were followed, and questions were answered politely. When small issues appeared, they were handled quickly and calmly. The staff did not panic or feel unsure. They remembered what they had learned. Later in the day, a different group of tourists arrived. They were tired from travel and looked confused about where to go. In the past, such a moment might have caused stress, but now the staff approached them with patience. They listened carefully, explained clearly, and guided them kindly. The tourists responded positively, thanking the staff for their help. This simple interaction showed how much had changed. The staff no longer feared difficult moments. They understood that calm communication could solve most problems. They also knew they were not alone. If a situation became too much, support would always be there. Behind the scenes, the boss received a short update about how smoothly things were going. He smiled quietly, not because he wanted praise, but because he knew the team had grown stronger. He trusted them fully. For him, that trust was the most important result of everything that had happened. As the day continued, the place remained calm and welcoming. Families took photos, children laughed, and couples walked slowly, enjoying the surroundings. The peaceful environment felt earned, as if it was the reward for handling the past with patience and respect. During a short break, a few staff members sat together and talked about the incident from the previous day. They did not speak with anger or frustration. Instead, they spoke thoughtfully. They discussed what they had learned and how they could improve even more. One said that staying calm had been the hardest part. Another said that feeling supported had made all the difference. The manager listened quietly to these conversations. He realized that leadership was not just about giving orders. It was about creating an environment where people felt safe, respected, and confident. He felt grateful for the lesson. As evening approached, the pace slowed. Visitors began to leave, carrying memories of a pleasant experience. Some waved goodbye to the staff. Others offered kind words of thanks. These small gestures felt meaningful. They reminded the team why their work mattered. The staff began their closing routines, working together smoothly. There was no rush, no tension, just steady teamwork. The place slowly grew quiet again, wrapped in soft evening light. Before leaving, the manager gathered the team one last time. He thanked them for their dedication and reminded them that challenges can appear without warning. What matters is how they respond. He encouraged them to always choose calm, respect, and teamwork. The staff listened carefully. They felt ready for whatever the future might bring. They knew they would face more challenges, but they also knew they had the strength to handle them. As they left one by one, each person carried a quiet sense of pride. They had been part of something important, not a dramatic event, but a meaningful lesson in leadership and human understanding. Somewhere beyond the gates, the boss reflected briefly on the incident as well. He knew that stepping in had been necessary, but what mattered more was what came after. The growth of the team, the calm return of the place, and the lessons learned were far more valuable than solving a single problem. The story of that day did not spread loudly. It was not shared through dramatic words or attention. Instead, it lived quietly in the way people worked, spoke, and treated one another afterward. And in that quiet change, there was something powerful, a reminder that true leadership does not always shout. Sometimes it simply steps in, listens, and shows the way forward with calm strength.